Hello and welcome to the Fossil Arcade podcast. I'm Graeme and I'm back again with Alex.
Hello.
How you doing, Alex?
Not too bad. It was my birthday quite recently.
Oh yeah.
So I managed to pick up Link's Awakening for the Switch.
Oh yeah, I've been playing that for a few weeks now and I'm nearly finished with it.
I've just scratched the surface, so I've barely played any of it. But I've never played the original either.
Oh right,
so
right.
It's all a new discovery to me. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm loving the graphical style. I know that it's got a reputation for some of the harder puzzle elements and kind of not knowing what to do next. And I've stumbled upon one or two quite near to the beginning of just not knowing where I should go and revisiting areas more times than I probably should have.
I feel like the only advice I could give you is just be like really exhaustive.
Yeah.
And like if you haven't explored somewhere or if you think you've gone like as far as you can possibly go, double check and use that telephone feature as well, because you can go to like the telephone houses and like get tips and things. I feel like I kind of like prefer the original, to be honest with you, but
Right.
maybe that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
So it's still early days for the Fossil Arcade podcast. In the first episode, we did our music quiz, and we are planning to do another quiz in the future, but we kind of need Ben to be here as well for that. So it's just myself and Alex today. So we decided that, seeing as Alex and I are both big PlayStation VR fans, and it's the 3-year anniversary of the PlayStation VR's release this month, we just have a little reflection on our kind of experiences and opinions on the PlayStation VR and see what we think of its time so far and where we would like it to go in the future. And that will not be limited to, but also include discussions of what games we feel would make a good kind of VR port, especially stuff that we might have seen in arcades that could be given a new lease of life through the headset. Between the two of us, Alex was the big proponent of VR when it first came out. I know you you built up to it over a long time. And when it first came out, you got like all manner of different games.
Everything, yeah.
So just give us a quick run through of like your introduction of the VR.
Well, I've always been interested in the concept of VR. Never tried one in my life, not that there were many to try, but through watching films and reading sci-fi novels and just the concept of VR, always found attractive. Really wanted to try it. Just assumed it had gone away years ago. Never gave it a second thought, really.
It's the kind of thing that pops up every now and then fails and then goes away again. I think a lot of people were expecting that that's what was going to happen with the PSVR and other VR headsets when they emerged. They were just going to be a flash in the pan.
So yeah, got really excited about it, and I remember it came out again, like you say, it was in October, so it was round by my birthday. So I saved up a load of money and then kind of said, "Oh, everyone give me money for my birthday, so I can just funnel it all into this PlayStation VR," and went whole hog into it. VR, 2-move controllers. Loads of different games, and I'd booked about 2 days off work, I think, because I think it came out on a Thursday, and so is that right?
You had yourself a long weekend, did you?
But yeah, I thought to myself, oh yeah, I'll have I'll take some time off work and really get into it, and kind of not factoring in the horrific motion sickness that you can get from PlayStation VR. I was just thinking, yeah, I'll play for 12 hours a day.
So having been like so excited to get it, how well do you feel it's integrated into your regular gaming like lifestyle over the last 3 years? Because obviously, I think it's fair to say anybody who buys one of these headsets, myself included, the first couple of months, it's very kind of high intensity usage, where you put it on almost every single day and play an hour or two if you can. But over time, like with anything you get, things tend to kind of fall away. But with the VR, because it is such a commitment, really, with some people you might have to move furniture or put time aside where family or pets aren't going to be around. Do you feel like it's integrated well into your gaming life, just generally?
It's kind of a yes and no, and probably more weighted towards no, sadly. And the reason for that is, when I first got it, I lived in a flat. There wasn't much space at all for setting up a VR. I had a coffee table. You came around and tried it. I had a coffee table right in front of your legs. So, and stretching out your arms, one side you'd hit a window and the other side was open air, so you were kind of okay. But yeah, you'd hit a window. So things like Office Simulator I never played because I just knew...
It limited the kind of games you might get into.
I played a few demos where I'd need to reach something and I'd reach out for it and I'd hit the wall in the flat.
It
So I
adds a whole
couldn't,
new
I couldn't,
meaning to
yeah,
like
I
the
couldn't
demo
reach it.
thing.
Yeah,
You're actually literally demoing it like, can I physically play it rather
yeah,
than
yeah.
can I
This
just
is
do I just enjoy it?
out of pure necessity now. Um, so yeah, there were those problems. Then I moved house about a year ago, and now I do have a lot more room, which is great. And so that's partly probably seen a resurgence in my interest in VR.
Hmm.
Now I've got the extra room, but I'd say over the 3 years, it's come in sort of fits and bursts. Sometimes I suppose maybe based around the games that are releasing. You know,
Yeah, I
a
think a
new game
lot.
would come
Yeah.
out and you'd get very into it. I think with you, it was with Resident Evil
Hmm.
7, where you know, you'd get that and you'd play it every night for weeks because you were just so engrossed in it. But the main detractor for me is I have an original PlayStation VR release day,
Yes.
and you've got the, well, you know, kind of version 1.2, I suppose you might call it, the slight successor that they made.
Yeah.
And the problem with mine is the breaker box will not send through the HDR image um, between the PlayStation and the TV.
Yeah. So if you're running off a PlayStation into a 4K TV and you have that old box there, it
Yeah,
blocks that altogether, which means you have to then disconnect that VR unit to get the full advantage of your PlayStation, especially for you when you've got PlayStation Pro.
I've got a PlayStation 4 Pro and I've got a 4K TV, so I want to take advantage of those, the HDR and everything else included.
How soon after the release of the VR was it that they released the 2.0 that I have? Because obviously my version has a new breaker box where it passes through HDR
Yeah,
seamlessly. I don't have to do any disconnection at all. And they also they reduced the wires by a factor of one for the new VR as well. So there's like a little bit less setup for
yeah.
me too.
Um, I can't remember. I want to say it was about 18 months.
Right. I feel like they should have done a service to their early adopters and at least offer the breakout box in like a trade-in service, so you could send your breakout box away and maybe pay a small fee and get a replacement, or
I'd
just
have
be able
paid, yeah,
to buy
yeah.
the second the 2.0 breaker box on its own. I mean, I'm not as so naive to believe that Sony would offer you it for free, but I think they could have done something there.
When it first came out, I'd have paid. Probably paid about £50 for that breaker box.
I see that's a lot, but I understand your conundrum because if you have a 4K television and then you want to use your PS4 Pro to play like 4K games, and then the VR's in the way, you know, it wears you down, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it now it takes planning if I want to play
Yeah,
with VR. I can't just plug the headset in and think to myself, "Oh, I'll do 20 minutes on such and such game." After all that setup, I want to play it for a few hours.
to make it worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then I might leave it set up for that weekend, say. And if I did have the same setup you've got, where I could unplug everything but just plug the headset in when I want to play, I would definitely be on it a lot more.
yeah. Because for me, having bought it a little bit after you, just to give my own background on the PlayStation VR, when you first got your headset and I tried it, I was very enthralled by it. But I said at the time that I wouldn't buy my own because I didn't feel like the technology was quite there.
Yeah,
As it happened, I was fortunate enough to win some Amazon vouchers back in 2018, so a little bit over a year now. And I just decided that if I could get the VR headset for free with these vouchers, then that would be really great, and that enabled me to do that. So my perspective on the VR is probably a little bit different from a lot of people because I didn't pay anything really for the headset.
yeah,
Of course, I could have used those vouchers on something else, but at the end of the day, it didn't hurt me to get it. And I have the version where it's no more complex for me to plug the headset in than it would be to plug my phone into a charging cable or a controller into an old retro console. It's just literally one cable and it's done. I do still need to have like time set aside
yeah.
in a way, especially because my cat, whose name is Kabuki, is very fond of wires and chewing them. So not only would I not put the headset on and not be able to see him because he might get a kick, a foot to the face, he loves to chew that PlayStation cable. And my biggest bugbear with the VR headset is that the cable that connects it from the headset to the PS4 is not detachable from the headset. So if you break that cable, you've broken the headset. And I just wish they would have made it a proprietary cable which you could replace. So if you get a snag or a tear or break in that wire, then you could fix it without having to buy a whole new headset. In terms of how I play it, when I first got it, I got Super Hot VR, and not long after that, I got Resident Evil, and then not long after that, I had Astrobot. And I found that for the first sort of 5, 6 months or so, I was getting one VR game a month and completing it within that month, and then I'd have the next month would come along, and that rolled on for quite a while. But then in 2019, I felt like I'd kind of exhausted the back catalogue of games which had built up between it being released and me buying it. So there hasn't been as much this year to
No.
really excite me. The only major things that have come out for PlayStation VR was Blood and Truth and No Man's Sky Beyond, the update. And I wasn't really impressed with either of them, to be honest with you.
I think you did buy your VR headset at a really good time.
Mm.
The back catalogue had built up quite well. There were some really good titles. When I got mine, most things were a little bit tech demo-y.
Yeah.
And it was great fun, and it was really good for showing off to friends and family. That was probably where I got my most enjoyment out of it initially.
Seeing other people use it.
Yeah, than sitting playing it on my own. The longer games, well, there weren't really many of them, and they weren't that engrossing. By holding off, I think you did probably have the better overall experience.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, the best overall VR game is probably Resident Evil 7, because it's traditional enough that anybody can really just pick it up and play it and understand how it's supposed to be used rather than having to kind of adjust to VR too much. And it's really, really immersive. Like, it's truly a terrifying game. And besides the VR, Resident Evil 7 is one of the best Resident Evil games anyway. And probably behind that, very closely, I would say that Superhot VR and Astrobot Rescue Mission are
Yeah.
really, really high quality games. So there's definitely enough there that anybody who's slightly interested in VR would probably feel they get their money's worth out of these games, especially given that these days you can buy the Mega Pack bundle that PlayStation do, where you get the headset and 5 games, and it's like 200 quid.
It's an absolute steal now.
Yeah,
for
you
VR.
get like Skyrim, and you get Resident Evil 7, and you get Astrobot in there as well.
You could pick it up on a whim now. It didn't used to
Yeah.
be like that. You had to plan. You had to really be passionate about it and want one, and probably to have tried it. But yeah, you could just pick it up on a whim now.
Our favourite games. I know that Superhot's high on your list.
Yeah, I think Astrobot's got the #1 slot.
They're great to watch other people play. When somebody's in the room playing Superhot, anybody else who can watch them on the television is probably going to have almost as much fun, because it's just a great time to kind of enjoy the kind of slight humiliation factor of how ridiculous you look in VR. But also, Superhot is really intense. If anybody doesn't know, it's like this puzzle action game where assailants are coming to kill you, but they only move and attack when you physically move yourself. So if you stay perfectly still, somebody who's coming at you with a gun or a knife will be frozen in suspended animation. Then you have the opportunity to kind of move out of their way and dodge them. And it's this kind of like progressively more intense action puzzle game. So it's very entertaining to just watch somebody play it and offer them advice. But the thing that I was going to say is that our favourite games are not multiplayer. And it feels like there's a gap in VR where they've done a bit of kind of asymmetric multiplayer with the PlayStation, with the VR Playroom.
Yeah, Playroom VR is a great experience with another couch player. I think what's so much fun about that is that you're all working together and you're all shouting. Sometimes the other people sat on the settee actually have controllers and they interact with the game itself. And it's that kind of nice interaction that at the time really sold VR, because you could play it with complete non-gamers, even people who said, I don't want to touch the headset. Or
people who maybe can't wear the headset even for whatever
reason. And parents and grandparents who probably have no interest in playing a game. It's at that level of almost like a quiz or a board game where it really is accessible to everyone. And yeah, definitely had some really fun experiences with Playroom.
Yeah, I just wish it was a little bit more robust, and that's the thing where it's like, where Astrobot was going to have a 2-player mode, the Astrobot kind of demo is in Playroom VR, and you play that 2-player. So it's a shame that they didn't kind of just keep that in a way. This is the thing, that over the whole kind of year and a half that I've had the VR, I've kind of been wanting a robust multiplayer experience, and we've kind of had a couple which have been fine to experiment with, but nothing like that's really set the world on fire. There's a free one called Rec Room on the PlayStation VR, which you can also get on Oculus, I think, where it's just a free-to-play mini-game sort of a social club, for lack of a better word, and
Yeah.
there's all other VR players in there, and you can just play like disc golf or like a paintball thing, and it's okay, but it doesn't feel completed. It feels like a demo, like something that's in production. And given that it's free, it's like, well, what more do you want? That's absolutely fine. But the fact is that it just didn't really hold our attention like
It was
together.
quite clunky, in some parts it was quite hard to know how to trigger the events together.
It felt like it'd been designed primarily for Oculus, really, and not for
Yeah.
PlayStation VR. So it was kind of like when you use the Move controllers, which don't have a thumbstick on, you don't really feel immersed so
And
much.
I found when we got into the activities, we would often say, "Are you here? What are you seeing on your screen?" And it was
Mm,
confusing as to whether we were actually in the same lobby sometimes. And as you say, it's because it's free, so it probably had some quirks and kinks to be knocked out.
definitely, yeah. We also played No Man's Sky in VR.
I was going to bring this up, and I think it's worth us discussing it.
Yeah, I mean, this was No Man's Sky obviously has a very trepidatious history, but after being out for like what is it, about 3 years as well, right? They've been giving it all these free updates, and it's very commendable that Hello Games have offered all this free content, really, and Beyond has a VR component. But in this was my first time playing No Man's Sky. I hadn't touched it at all before I heard that it was getting VR. So I thought, okay, this is a good time to like jump in. It's past its kind of rocky phase. They fixed it over these throughout these firmware updates, and now it's got VR. There could not be a better time to start playing this game. But I found that very quickly, it's a very clear case of quantity over quality.
Yeah.
And while No Man's Sky launched and was, berated for its lack of content, the content that was there at launch also didn't really work very well, was another one of the complaints. And although it's been through years and they've added all this new stuff, the problems are now just more numerous. Like, yes, there's more things to do, but no one part of it works particularly well either. So
No.
it's like the same complaints that were there on day one, that it doesn't work very well, are still there. It's just that you've got a lot more ways to experience that lack of competency in its gameplay. And one of them is the VR.
Well, I think we jumped into it, didn't we? Kind of like pretty much day one with the VR on No Man's Sky. We were quite excited. There'd been quite a build up to it,
Mm.
probably over, I don't know, 6 months to a year, probably
But they
of
rumoured it themselves. They were always murmuring about it, and then they announced it like, yeah, about 6 months ahead
yeah.
of
So
time.
we'd been discussing it, I think, for a while, probably following rumours and saying yes, that would be great. Maybe this will be the long-term multiplayer VR game that we get, we sink our time into.
Yeah, we could play it like once a week and build a little base, or like
Yeah,
just have a fun like chill out time.
yeah, friends adventuring together through space would have been great. But we started it, and I think the first time we played it, sadly enough, was actually the best. And we and we had numerous glitches, but they weren't game breaking.
Hmm.
Was the point? So we started it straight away, and you were in hysterics because my arm was sort of twisting throughout my entire body, and if I moved a certain way, my character's body would start to lie down.
It was like your head
And
would move, but your feet were staying in place and stuff like that, and your body was like stretching.
yeah, it was very disturbing. And
Hmm.
and similar things happened to you, but they were kind of almost comical
They were
glitches.
amusing glitches where you
Yeah,
feel like, oh, I'll give this the benefit of the doubt, and in a few weeks they'll patch it, and all this
yeah.
kind of cosmetic stuff can be fixed. But when you're walking along in VR and you fall through the geometry of the world and you
Oh, and it
just
makes you
keep
feel sick.
falling, that happened to me 3 times, and I was just like, no, no, I'm not doing it. It's just like it's jarring in any game. It's
Yeah.
really just and my girlfriend was big on No Man's Sky when I got it, but she was playing one day. She's flying through space. This was not in VR. Her spacecraft just disappeared, and her player character was just left in space, just like with no spaceship around it, and she instantly died.
God.
So she quit the game after that. After about 24 hours of playing it, like accumulatively, she was done.
Yeah.
You had other things where I would be flying through space, and in VR, my spaceship would just spontaneously twist 90 degrees and just go from flying in one direction, just snap and be off in another
Oh.
direction. And we had times where it would say that Alex and I were in the same place, and I couldn't see you.
We'd be stood on the same rock, wouldn't we, or something like that, or a monument, and saying, "Well, I'm here." And it was the amount of time wasted was the issue.
Yes,
Where
because you get the
we'd be
VR
trying
out, like
to,
you were
yeah,
saying, you set it all up.
you might have 10 minutes of actual enjoyment where we were together in a level trying to progress something, and then it would kick us out of each other's game, and we wouldn't be able to load back in no matter what we did. And so we'd kind of have to just agree to, right, let's switch that off.
Yeah, that's an hour and a half wasted of our day,
Yeah,
basically.
and so that was quite annoying. Yeah, we haven't really gone back to it. We might mod it maybe if we heard it had all been cleared up, but I don't think we are going to hear that.
With the VR update, Beyond came in 2.0, and
Yeah.
they're on 2.14 now. So it's had 14 updates since it came out, but I was still playing it up to 2.09, and it was
just as bad.
still
Yeah.
unbearable.
But what I was going to say was we're kind of talking a few negatives about No Man's Sky. When it did work, I did have a lot of fun.
There are addictive qualities to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is fun to be had somewhere.
That first playthrough where it did work and we did get a decent amount of time in was really good, and I really enjoyed it, and it actually filled me with a lot of hope for the future of that game with us playing it. So it was quite sad that it didn't pan out. I liked the controls. Any of the parts where I would go into a little module or a base or something, and you would be jumping up and flying past the window and just doing stupid things like that was hilarious. It was good fun.
To go move on to a positive though,
Yes.
the one game you and I have both played, where it was multiplayer, and we just couldn't get enough of it, was Wipeout Omega Collection.
Oh, great fun there.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
It's just the same Wipeout game, but in VR. And like any game, I really feel like adding in a multiplayer element to it just it gives it so much more life. So playing it online in VR and knowing that, like, we were both in that very kind of immersive environment just made it so much more fun.
It played really well. You hope that things will transition well into VR, but you don't know until you try it. And Wipeout worked. I probably preferred it in VR than I did any other Wipeout I've played.
Right.
Because it didn't really make me motion sick at all, but you'd think it would. But it still had really exciting parts where you're flying up vertically at the side of a building, and you kind of fly straight over the top when you reach the very top. And it was really exhilarating in VR. Almost sickening, like almost made you want to throw up, but not quite. They just got it just right.
Well, it's kind of like a roller coaster sort of thing where you want the tummy churn thing.
You've got the adrenaline.
Yeah.
You've got the adrenaline, and every time you went up that vertical building, I got the same experience. I got that same feeling, and I remember us doing a tournament of. We didn't think it was going to be so many, but it ended up being about 12 or 15 races.
We just couldn't put it down.
No, but it was still fun. We got to the end of those races, and we were still enjoying it. It
didn't get monotonous. Didn't get boring. No.
Any of its appeal. No. And I think you're probably better at Wipeout than me.
Well, I had it for a bit longer was the only difference, I think. You got it on the PlayStation Plus, didn't you? So you got it in for free, kind of included in the subscription. It was actually, I bought it just before I had the headset, so it was actually the first game I got, but I wasn't able to play it multiplayer until you got it sometime later when it came free on the service.
So I think as we were playing, we didn't always see each other that much because there was a bit slight difference in the skill level. But any time you would have a neck and neck kind of finish, or you'd attack each other and manage to get past one another, it was just so much more fun in VR, and being able to look out the side of the ship and see your ship alongside mine. I think part of it is the depth as well, because you can see the distance. So if you can see the finish line, you kind of see the noses of your ships, and you can see, okay, I'm just about going to get there. I don't know, I just think that's way more exciting.
And it's like, if I bump you in a racing game, I've just bumped you. But if I bump into you or fire a rocket at you in Wipeout VR and it hits you, I know that I've caused some visual turmoil literally to you, because your ship is going to like bounce and like react to that explosion. And there's just something so much more visceral about that. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that in a way, Wipeout, the online multiplayer, sort of teases you a bit, because we've had some online multiplayer that's been successful there, and I just want more of that. We mentioned earlier that you can get PlayStation VR pretty cheap now in the Mega Pack, and I think Wipeout is actually one of the games that they're currently including in that. I think part of the reason the Mega Pack exists is because you have Oculus Quest now, which is this entirely 100% portable free of any encumberment of a computer. You can just have the headset and the controllers, take it anywhere, install games onto it. And obviously, there's a trade-off there in the fidelity of the games or how much you can have. But the fact that you can literally have a portable VR headset that costs about 500 quid is a real competitor to PlayStation VR. Before they were offering VR, and you'd need a PS4, which would be plus 200 quid, and you'd need the headset, which was going to be probably about 250 without any games at all, and you need the proprietary PlayStation Move controllers, which cost about £70 for two anyway. That's a lot of money, and now you've got this £500 Quest thing. If you've got a casual user, £500, and you can play Super Hot like in your back garden, and it's probably far more freeing than having to set up a bunch of cables or move furniture for the PlayStation VR. With that competition in mind, what things do you think PlayStation needs to do, or what games specifically would you like to see to breathe new life into PSVR in 2020 and keep it more than a novelty? Because we know they've said that the headset as it is now is going to work with the 5,
Yeah.
which is great because I don't want to have to buy a new headset as well as a new PlayStation. But I need to know that it's going to mean something and not just be backwards compatibility, really, because although that's important, what's the new hotness? What's the new thing
Yeah.
that we're going to be playing? And ideally, can you and I play it together?
Well, in terms of what they need to do, I do think they need to release a new headset. I think they need to lose the wires, which is very feasible. I don't think it needs to be portable. I don't think it needs to be standalone. You can play it in a field, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because, only speaking for myself, but I don't think I would do that. I don't think I would play it anywhere except in a house.
I'd do it with friends. I wouldn't do it alone.
Yeah, exactly.
You get mugged for one thing.
Yeah. But I'm not so meaning so much about playing outside even. I mean, like, I wouldn't pack it in a bag and take it to a hotel if I was staying overnight somewhere. I'd take my Switch for that, probably.
To me, it really depends on the game, whether or not I'd play it on the go. And I think, if I had somebody with me who could play along with me, because that's the thing with the Quest as well, is that you could play with two people. I think you can connect together. I think in that situation, maybe I would. But it's more that I could take it to your house, sort of thing. I could pick up the Quest and take it over to you, and we'd have two in the same place, or vice versa. And I think you're right that if they copied some of what the Quest can do in a wireless capacity and have it be wireless from a PS5, it would be far less encumbered, easier to use, and although it wouldn't be portable, perhaps I would be able to bring a headset to you, connect it to one PS5 perhaps, and play some. Obviously, they'd be lower graphical fidelity, but you'd be able to play something where we're together in some small way, even if it's just like fantasy air hockey or some sort of very low grade fantasy mini golf game. It would just be fun to have that as like an option.
Yeah, I think they. So yeah, lose the wires is the main thing, especially for me on my base level one where it's such a pain to set up. Definitely a big thing to me, but I agree with you. Need to improve the multiplayer aspect, and I also think maybe almost make less of when a game does have a VR mode, less of a thing of it has this VR mode, but it's a cut down of the main game, which you get with a lot of games.
It's like we've had in Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront. They gave us a VR mission, an X-wing mission. It was great.
I loved it. Yeah.
But we don't have.
Star Wars fun.
For some reason, we've gone years after that, and they haven't made a fully fledged VR Star Wars game where you can fly an X-wing in various missions, and it would just be fantastic if you and I could both hop in an X-wing, or one of us in a TIE fighter, and just play it together. It just seems like a no-brainer, that sort of thing.
Well, what I would like to see is I'd like to see that, then you'd never have this for every game, but I'd like to see them release games, and that game is also playable in VR, like Resident Evil 7.
Yes.
Like that. Not some, it's got a VR mode, and we've made one scenario which does all the cheesy VR things just to make you want to play it in VR. It's no, here's the game, play it standard if you like. If you've got a VR headset, play it in VR. And I think that would sell more VR headsets than the gimmicky extra modes.
They've got Medieval remake out this month or in a few weeks' time. And, you don't need to play it in VR, but if you could, that would just be really fun, right? Tetris Effect is a good example of this, where it's a game that it has an optional VR element where you can play the whole game in VR, and you don't have to, but it just adds an extra layer to it. And it's a shame with stuff like Skyrim. If you want to play Skyrim in VR, you've literally got to buy Skyrim again. You have to have a second copy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why don't they just have that as like a patch, or have it just be one thing that you
Mm.
buy? Or
I think they need to kind of improve oh, accessibility of the VR. What I mean by that is, if you go onto the PlayStation Store, it feels a little bit buried, the PlayStation VR section, and when you go into that section, um, it's quite hard to find new
it,
things and kind of like what you're
mm,
looking for.
it always feels very introductory, like it's just introducing you to VR. It has a very nice big graphic for that, but you don't penetrate it and get down to like the nitty gritty. Like, well, where do I find the stuff for me?
Yeah, and everything's kind of mixed in together, and there are some really good little experiences in VR that they have on there. Animated films and things like that where you're in the animation. I love all that sort of stuff, and I suppose something that could also boost and promote VR would be put in some of the little VR sections onto Blu-ray discs when they get released. If there was some tie-in they could do. I mean, I guess maybe it would only be able to be on Sony Pictures films, but if you've got the new Spider-Man film coming out, they made that Spider-Man little VR mode.
Oh, right.
But why not put that on the disc so that if you're playing it through a PlayStation,
You have the
you
option
can
to
play
download
the
it or
VR mode,
something.
because you can watch the film in
Mm.
VR. It's like just tie it into, say, like the home release or something like that would give you something to extra to look forward to with getting your Blu-ray. So what kind of game series would you be interested in seeing come to PlayStation VR, or maybe have a new game if it's already on VR?
Well, using kind of Resident Evil as a off point, I like the idea that we've got an existing franchise in there that's been adapted to VR. And not that I want this to be too much of a fad, really, but I think there's an untapped well there of taking existing games and adapting them into VR, either in the form of a sequel or a remake.
Yeah,
Because with Resident Evil 7, it's an entirely original story, but it perfectly recreates that mansion atmosphere from the first game on PlayStation 1. So then to be in that in VR was really exciting. And I was disappointed when Resident Evil 2 didn't offer any VR option. Obviously, it's a very immaculate, graphically spectacular game, Resident Evil 2. So I get that those graphics would not be easily replicated on a VR headset, but
mm.
still, it would have been nice to have it as an option. I would have even been happy to pay a small DLC fee to add it.
Yeah,
Failing that, I think there are some arcade games which could use VR as a launch platform for kind of like a reboot, as it were. I know
yeah,
that there's a House of the Dead remake in the works at the moment, and they could easily make House of the Dead a VR game. It'd actually be fun to have a modern graphic version and also the old kind of 90s graphics like
yeah.
accessible in VR. Similarly, I would do the same thing for Time Crisis,
Yes, Time
where
Crisis was on my list.
and that would be an easy game where you could add multiplayer to it, either asymmetrically or online with two headsets.
And you could use the aim controller they've already released.
But yeah, I would like to see kind of some games which are fun to kind of play over and over and get high scores with, where you can like share that experience with a second person or more. And there's nothing wrong with kind of utilizing some recognizable names in that
No?
capacity. I've even one evening, I for a laugh, I rooted in my Super Nintendo Classic into the VR, and I played Star Fox in VR. Obviously, when you play a non-VR game in the VR headset, it's not 3D or anything, but it still fills your whole
Yeah.
vision. And when I had the headphones on as well, there was no, it was completely like sensory deprivation around me, and I was just playing Star Fox like purely
On a
in
project,
VR,
like what looks like a projector
like a
screen, effectively.
cinema-sized
Yeah,
screen. Basically, it was
massive.
great. It really was. It was fantastic. So I'd love to see them do like old stuff. And speaking about Star Wars again, there was a vector-based Star Wars arcade game that's well renowned. It's one of the earliest like kind of big vector arcade games. I'd love to see something like that remade for VR,
Mm.
so you can go in and see like very simplistic graphics, but like as though they were like real or present in front of you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd just be really fun to see like PS1 like or PS2 like Time Crisis, but in VR. I'd be down for that.
Oh, 100%. Top of my list is more Star Wars.
Yeah.
We've got the new film coming out in December. It's great timing.
They've made that Vader game, haven't they? The VR,
Yes,
but it's not for
for the
PlayStation.
Oculus, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the Oculus exclusive, I think. Or
would
it's,
love to play that. But it's an episodic game, so I think if you played all the episodes together, it's probably like fairly robust. But I think standalone, it probably each one does probably feel a little bit like a tech demo. I think I'd like to see a VR game in the Metal Gear Solid universe.
yeah,
A remake of Metal Gear Solid 1, to be honest, in VR would
seems
would
unlikely
be
to
the most
happen with the
ideal thing.
current
Yeah,
situation at
definitely.
Konami.
But it's a dream thing. And talking of dreams, I'd like to see VR in dreams.
Oh yeah, because it's supposed to come to Dreams, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's still not been any update as far as I know on
It's
that.
not fully released yet,
But
is it? So
no. But when that launches, that will be maybe that will be our multiplayer Hail Mary that we've been waiting for.
perhaps.
Make our own game and play it 2-player. So yeah, I kind of have Time Crisis on my list. I think the last thing, which is a funny choice because, as you know, I was too scared to play Resident Evil 7 in VR. I've put down Silent Hill VR because I used to love the Silent Hill series. I probably actually preferred it to Resident Evil, and I think it's not the same as Resident Evil. It's more creepy and eerie than jump scares.
Well, with Resident Evil, it's kind of what you're seeing is the reality of the game, isn't it?
Mm.
When the zombie comes for you, the zombie is coming for you. Whereas
Yeah,
in Silent Hill, as I understand it,
more psychological.
it's psychological. So yeah, it's a different situation.
Yeah.
And in VR, they could really, push that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever played Eternal Darkness on the GameCube. That was
No.
it's this big psychological horror thing where the game would pretend to like turn down the volume on your TV, or it would just the game would pretend to corrupt your memory data. So it would just come up saying, "Oh, your memory data is corrupted now. This memory card's been wiped." And
So evil.
there were a handful of things that the game would do to you in Eternal Darkness that were like they were very fourth wall psychological, where it's like if it turned on the volume on your TV, you might be like, "What?" and then crank up the volume on your TV yourself to counteract it, and then it would just blast like this sound out at you. So if Silent Hill went down that route in VR, that could be really interesting. I mean, I don't want people to get motion sick or anything, but if they wanted to get heavy-handed on kind of twisting your perspective and stuff, then it'd be
They
fair.
could easily
It'd
do
be
so.
fair play. Yeah, I don't think that it will ever happen though, because of Konami's kind of taken such a back seat on games development these days.
The Batman Arkham VR.
There's a little bit of that, isn't it?
Yeah, at the end with the Joker.
You kind of like you're looking, and is he there? Is he not there?
But yeah, they're kind of the things that I'd like to see with VR. I think I am excited to see where it goes next because of the PlayStation 5. I think that if the PlayStation 5 was, let's say, it was 3 or 4 years down the line, then I don't think we'd have seen any incremental upgrade to the VR at all. But now the PlayStation 5 is releasing, it's their opportunity to kind of relaunch the VR in some ways. I feel I don't know exactly how they'll do it. We discussed some ideas, but it's a new opportunity to say to people, have you tried PlayStation VR? We've got all these new games coming out. We've got this VR version 2 without wires or something that they might have. When they would launch it, I wouldn't like to say. I don't think it would be on launch day with the PlayStation 5 because otherwise you're going to potentially end up with a £500 to £1,000 outlay.
I feel like it's a really unknown entity because PlayStation VR is certainly a success. I think it did exactly what they wanted it to do, and although I'm sure Sony would be happier if it sold 10 or 15 million instead of 4, I wouldn't call it a failure by any stretch. I think it's done very well, but it doesn't fill me with confidence that they're going to give it a huge push with the next system. I'm very happy that they've said that the current headset's going to work with PlayStation 5, but I don't know if they're going to like put a big VR game out on launch to utilize that, or even a year from afterwards, are they going to do anything? I think that they probably will do a new headset at some point though, but it would require kind of like a whole new launch. They would probably wait even till like December 2021 and have it as a whole new thing there and get a handful of games ready then. Because like you say, like it could cost an absolute fortune to have it be too close. Give it a year, see how the VR climate changes over the next 2 years as well. and they probably will do a new headset. It just depends on what games they're going to offer, and they're going to have to offer something really special, I think, because we're done with this kind of like, oh, isn't VR incredible? Like you can like turn the keys in your car because yeah, all that kind of stuff is expected, but it doesn't make a full game. And that's been my disappointment with stuff I've played more recently, like Blood and Truth.
Yeah.
It just hasn't kind of taken a step beyond what we already had. VR is should be more than a novelty at this point. It should be considered a more of a standard feature. If they were doing that more frequently, then we'd have more online options as well. So I think they need a few more like killer apps,
Yeah.
and maybe to get some more name brands on it. Not just Resident Evil 7, but like something that's kind of a must play that has VR as an option or as a main sequel sort of thing.
And I think really to anyone who's listening that doesn't have a PlayStation VR but is considering picking one up, we'd both agree that you need to go out and get Astrobot, Super Hot, and
Resident Evil 7.
yeah, Resident Evil, if you've got the stomach for it, Resident
Yeah.
Evil 7. That didn't pop in my mind because it's too scary for me.
Resident Evil 7 is so good.
But yeah, I think those are the highly recommended titles.
Definitely,
and as you say, hopefully there's more to come, and something multiplayer. Maybe you'll see us out there one day, run around some crazy multiplayer game together.
So thank you for listening to the Fossil Arcade podcast. I hope everybody enjoyed our VR discussion. Thanks, Alex, for helping me out with that.
Thank you.
If you did enjoy listening to the podcast, Fossil Arcade is also a YouTube channel where you can go and watch all kinds of videos on retro video games, which feature Alex and I having similar talks and discussions, just like this one. It's interesting, actually, because not only can you play video games in the VR headset, but also you can watch 360 videos, and I often pop on YouTube and watch 360 videos. I've taken a helicopter tour all over New York City in my VR headset, and I really enjoyed it. So I would be interested in the future potentially creating some 360 video content on Fossil Arcade on YouTube that would then be viewable to VR users.
I'd love that.
It'd be amazing if you and I could create some VR content. Check out Fossil Arcade on YouTube if you're interested, and thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.